I'm Malcolm Jenkins, professional football player, philanthropist, activist, entrepreneur. And in my career, I've been in a lot of conversations and have been at a lot of tables. And at these tables, decisions are being made. And what I've learned is when decisions are being made, you want your voice at the table. And oftentimes, we're not represented. There's not enough diversity in thought or background to make good decisions. And so what I've aimed to do is create a platform where you have people with great wisdom, diverse thoughts to really have a voice. And so with today's opening thought, I want to read something that was written in 1933 by Carter G. Woodson in his book, The Miseducation of the Negro. He goes on to say, "The Negro boy sent to college by a mechanic seldom dreams of learning mechanical engineering to build upon the foundation his father has laid, that in years to come he may figure as a contractor or consulting engineer. The Negro girl who goes to college hardly wants to return to her mother if she's a washerwoman, but this girl should come back with sufficient knowledge of physics and chemistry and business administration to use her mother's work as a nucleus for a modern steam laundry. A white professor of a university recently resigned his position to become rich by running a laundry for Negroes in a southern city. A Negro college instructor would have considered such a suggestion an insult. The so-called education of Negro college graduates leads them to throw away opportunities which they have and to go in quest of those which they do not find." And with that, I start the conversation by saying, we should stop telling our kids to be doctors, lawyers, and athletes. Welcome to the table. All right, before we get into the discussion, what I want to do is introduce our guests. These are people who I value their opinion so much, which is why I'm bringing them to the table at this point in time. We'll start with my immediate left and dear friend.
Hello. My name is Rolanda. I am an accountant. I specialize in audit, and I have over 9 years of experience.
Joe Johnson, retail professional and entrepreneur.
Eric White, creative director and stylist.
India Robinson, marketer, particularly entertainment marketing.
All right, so I want to know, and we'll start with you, Joe, but with the premise of what Carter G. Woodson wrote in 1933, and then my comment that we should stop telling our kids to be doctors, lawyers, and athletes. Like, what do you think? Do you think that what Carter G. Woodson wrote in 1933 holds any weight in 2019?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the first thought, right, or my interpretation of what he was saying in the book is, I think schools or or educational institutions prepare us to be employees and not employers, right? Which isn't really helping to lift us out of our economic challenges as people of color. So I think he was saying that in 1933, and here we are in 2019, and we're still a group of people who lag behind a lot of the major economic categories. So I think that was his purpose back then, and I think it still holds true today.
Okay, so hi.
I like speak freely.
Go. I think I have an issue with finite statements, such as we shouldn't teach our children to be this, that, or the other. One, I think it's even a mechanism of control, and I understand where he's coming from, but once again, I also think that there's even a level of privilege in the way that he articulated the expression about what we should and should not do as it relates to empowering and inspiring our youth or children or even kind of one another. I think that ultimately creating aspiration within itself is a gift. So I think expansion and exposure allows us to know what's available and what's out there, but give me hope first. Because I think when I was younger, I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I evolved that into what ultimately I ended up doing and being, which is still an extension of the idea. So like if I'm younger, as a child, I was told that I talk too much. Nothing's changed.
You should have been a lawyer.
You talk so much, little girl. You should be a lawyer. And then I evolved that into a passion ultimately for entertainment. And then I was like, maybe I should be an entertainment lawyer. And then I realized that the reason I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer is because I had this passion for talent. And so wanting to have a passion for talent evolved itself into thinking like, well, I don't have to do law. I could just do this idea of pushing a brand, which can be embodied by a human, or it can be embodied by an actual brand that manufactures and sells things. And so I think that evolution, I think telling kids no to anything at any given moment is not helpful. So I see aspiration, and this is just flipping it on its head. I think that everything that Woodson did and what's conveyed in this powerful body of work is definitely exemplary. I don't like the idea of just it's just so finite to be like, we need to stop doing X, Y, Z, because there's still something hopeful about kind of encouraging them to want to do something.
Well, I think I think there's two different perspectives. I think
Right.
Carter G. Woodson in what he's writing is thinking more about black people as a collective, right?
Right.
Like, how do we build collectively? And I think there is, though, on the other side of that, like our individuality, right? And our, if we want to be a doctor, we should go be able to doctor. But when we talk about now, like, this is big wave. We want to do business together. We want to be able to like lift black people.
Right.
Well, that takes a collective effort. And I think one thing that oftentimes we want our kids to go to what's the highest paying jobs. You either gonna be an athlete, you want to be a doctor or a lawyer because they make a lot of money.
Right.
What happens is you end up swimming upstream because of who you are, your race, where you came from. Like, you're always trying to beat the odds, and you can still get there and beat the odds,
Right.
but then you get there and you by yourself. Like, you can't employ your mom, you can't employ, so you become a lawyer, you open up a firm. How many of your family members are also lawyers? So all you're able to do maybe is the receptionist you can hire from, friends or family or something like that. So you can still climb, but like oftentimes, and we talk about it all the time as black people, like you get through corporate America and like the higher you go, the less representation you have, the less people that look like you there are. And it's like, so why? And then so you become empowered, but we as a group aren't.
But we might look at that and have a glimpse of hope, right? So if I'm saying I want to be a doctor and everyone says, well, you can't be a doctor. Like, there's no one that looks like you that's a doctor.
That's true.
If I do see a person that does become a doctor, that gives me that 1 ounce of hope that, wow, they did it, maybe I
Right.
can too.
I think we need both sides of it, though. You need people that look like you, so it's representative of what you're striving for and what other kids are also striving for. But we also do need to instill, kind of like the access of being a doctor or being a lawyer into the children too. You, like India said, you have to give them hope so that they know they can do it, but you also have to hone on their talents too. Like when he said, okay, you have a father that's a car mechanic, but seldom the son comes back and is an engineer for the car. Our culture doesn't teach that. Other cultures teach that. This is a family business. This is where you need to build on. And they may not want to do that, but they know that's going to financially empower them, and then maybe their kids can go out and start the next Facebook or something of that nature.
I think the thing about that I took from that even passage is the level of disdain that we have for blue collar, like people that work with their hands, because I think, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, I think we relate it to slavery. I think we think service industry has to do back to being back, in positions that we were forced into,
Like
or the only
nanny
position that we
and
get.
all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think because of that, and that just might be something that's internal that we deal with, we resonate, we link that with that, where we put like whether we're doing it subconsciously or consciously, we're putting white collar and blue collar in these boxes. And so if my father, like my grandfather, an entrepreneur, was a mover, it was called Christian Moving and Storage. And like what we're talking about, like he took his business and he employed all of his daughters, he employed all of his sons, and they always had a job. And even though my mother went out and did, human resources, and my aunt went out and did stuff with the government, like they always could come back and still have a base essentially to be able to empower and employ them. And but interesting enough, like after my grandfather passed, he left the business to all of his children. And so they, forcing them to come together to be able to have this entrepreneurship and be able to have this kind of just body of work within themselves. But I think that's different. I think that's different. I think we are different now in our generation than potentially my mother, who's baby boomers, whereas like they're looking at that and they're like, immediately when my grandfather passed away and they gave him the company, they sold it off and they split it up because they didn't even, the idea of having a moving and storage company to them seemed like it was almost sustainable. So I think that there's something interesting there about the empowerment, whereas like, I know my mother and my parents are baby boomers. I don't know about your guys's, but like, I don't think that I would see that with ours, because I think that if my grandfather, if he had given the company to me, I would have kept it. You know what I mean? I would have evolved it. I would have done something. I would have seen the opportunity for growth there. Whereas I don't think that, I think it's skipped and it's gone to us, because we see these tech startups and we see these evolutions that are possible from kind of just existing foundations.
Well, I think that so the way I framed this statement was just to be kind of antagonizing.
Right.
But I think there's the back half of it that we leave off. is that we should stop. Not that we are telling our kids to don't be a doctor, don't be a lawyer, or don't be an athlete. Is that we should stop telling them that that's the only thing that success is, right? Like we define those as successful endeavors because those make the most money.
Right.
You play football, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, like you making bank. You then can carry the rest of your family.
Right.
And that's a very short-sighted way to think because nobody else is thinking that way.
Right.
As opposed to go be a doctor or a lawyer, but then come back and be and serve either your community or
Right.
build upon
Right.
what your family already has.
Right.
So if your family, you come from a family of farmers, go to school and learn about agriculture, learn about business administration,
Right.
come back so that you can grow what your family already has. So you look at like every major city has a Chinatown, a Little Italy, like all of these places, and rarely do we have our own place where everybody's doing business, everybody's
We
growing.
have it. We have our own places, but they're
We
not.
do. It's just not
the same.
Yeah, it's not the same. It's not this. It's not this collective,
Right.
like where you have family businesses that are
Right.
like employing, everybody top down,
Yeah.
and everybody's playing their role, and everybody's still has their individuality.
Right.
Where you got accountants, you got the people who just do the work,
Yeah.
who are the creatives that do the website,
Right.
all of this stuff. I think we missed that part.
Yeah, I'm sorry. To your point, man, I think we're very, very good at making a king. We're not good at making kings, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of our challenge, right? And I think the empowerment piece is huge, right? In terms of being able to take what you learn, right? Put other people in a position so that they're in an ownership role, right? Or they can build on whatever the talents and skills that they have.
Right.
And I think you see that with other cultures, right? Like, they'll, in the franchise community, right? Like,
Right.
Small business community for like, certain cultures, they'll come to this country, they'll create a business. Then what they'll do is they'll help the next person either through financing, providing them with the financial resources or the education and the background to then create their own, right? And then they continue to replicate that particular strategy. And I think that's what is the challenge. I think sometimes we have a crabs in a barrel mentality, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And then that king crab was like, man, I'm not even going there though.
Right. I can't
So
do it all.
Yeah. Oh, I think the crabs in the barrel mentality comes from, and it's like the last line we wrote where Carter G. Woodson talks about like we pass up on opportunities that we have, chasing on ones that we will never get, right? So if you look at like, okay, how many of all of these top paying positions, how many of them are actually available to black people, right? And then
Available, what do you mean? Like available because they're not.
attainable,
Okay.
not available, attainable. Like I mean,
And we're talking about back in his time, or we're talking about presently?
right now.
Okay.
I mean, you talk about like, okay, compared to the population of this country, if we're telling all of our kids, be the top paying, you be a lawyer, be a doctor, be a football player. So for instance, an athlete,
Right.
like it's certain communities, they think that the only way out of here is to be an athlete.
Right.
The chances of you
The
becoming
only legal way out.
right, the chances of you becoming an NFL player are like slim to none.
Right.
And like, so I never want to thwart your dream to become what I've become because I've blazed that trail.
Right.
At the same time, the reality of that is that it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
Most likely
Gotta be
not gonna
realistic.
happen.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so what then are these other opportunities that we're just passing up because we're always looking at the top as opposed to like building? And he talks about how, even you talked about like immigrants will come over and you look at, okay, you go to any hood, who owns the liquor store, who owns the beauty salon, who owns the laundromat, all of these things that we need, like,
Right.
and we use and spend our dollars on
Right.
daily.
Right.
And we don't own any of it,
Right.
but nor do we aspire to own any of it,
Right,
which is, I
exactly.
think, is the bigger issue.
Well, so I think just my interjection with that is like, I think just like I said about the moving and storage company, my baby boomer parents
Right.
didn't want that.
Right.
But I think if any of us had the opportunity and had the finances
Facts.
to be able to buy a laundromat or to buy an XYZ, especially a cash business.
But I would say
You know
any
what I
of
mean?
us,
Cash, yeah.
A
any of
cash
us at the
business?
table.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people, they don't view that as a glorified job,
Right.
right? People are saying, I'm a doctor, that makes me successful. I'm
Right.
a lawyer, that makes me successful.
Right.
I own a laundromat. Our people don't equate that with being successful.
Facts.
So a lot of times we're talking about, the franchises and how we see these family-based things. I
Right.
think a lot of that is exposure. Like I can be getting my nails done and I will see people come in, they're saying, hi, Uncle so-and-so, hi, Auntie.
Absolutely.
Auntie so-and-so. It's a family-based thing.
Absolutely.
They grew up seeing this is what they're working for.
Yep.
This is how you accumulate wealth.
Yeah.
If we're not exposing our kids to that, like if I tell you name your child, hey, do you want to work in a nail salon? Right. The nail salon, like that's not what you do. That's not a glorified job. So I think that's our biggest issue here.
And so even to tackle into that, so where I live in Brooklyn, right? One of the things that I think is interesting about it is that a couple of Black-owned nail salons have opened up. And I find my friends being like, oh, let's go support. And they put a spin on it. They make it more of a glamorous experience, what we're seeing now in the new age of kind of just like pushing that out there. And one of the things I'll see with my friends is they'll be like, oh, I don't trust a Black girl doing my nails. Or like you'll go to get your eyebrows threaded and they'll be like, oh, she's not Indian. I don't trust her doing my threading. So even that idea of like from a service industry of like, it's even monopolized like almost like psychologically that like if that's not who's doing the services because of that, and even think about that reversism there.
Conditioned.
It's a conditioning. It's a complete conditioning of like now we want to do now we're aware of like there's bread in this, like this makes sense. There's a circulation of income that we can do here. With the new rise of kind of just like supporting Black businesses, we're like, all right, cool. But then it's also like I think there's a level of uneasiness around it of like, yeah, but like I know that she can do my nails better. So like, you know what I mean? So I'm going to support this one time. So, you know what I mean?
And that's why it's so important and so powerful for us to go out there and own our own things and teach other kids that, because at the end of the day, I know I can speak for myself as a Black man. I've had a lot of bad experiences at Black businesses too. Yeah. And that's part of the conditioning that comes with it is saying, okay, all right, I've had a bad experience. Right. Now, do I wipe the slate clean and go in here thinking, okay, this new Black salon is gonna do my nails or my pedicure or whatever as good as before, or am I just gonna go to the Asian lady down the street that I know has done a good job for me before?
So I kind of disagree with that a little bit, right? Because I think we're a little bit harder and more critical of Black businesses.
I agree.
Right? Because I think we'll go to an Italian restaurant, Chinese restaurant, have very, very poor service, and still go back and frequent that restaurant. Right?
Almost because we put them in a box of expectation.
Exactly, right? And I think we've got to fix that within ourselves and understand that, by supporting these businesses, right? Like, or even by having one negative experience, we can't just now say we're not going to any, Black business. So I think that's
I agree with that. I agree with that completely. I think it's, and I know like, and potentially, and I think we could talk about this for those that have traveled, but I think thinking about like my time and experiences when I traveled to like Ghana and Nigeria, where like, every business is Black owned. Like the ones that I went to, like they were all Black owned. And like when people turned up on them, it wasn't like you see how like if we turn up in a salon or whatever it is, it's like, oh, you're doing that. But like now everybody looks like you, so you turning up. You're not turning up because it's like a race thing. You're turning up because no, the service was bad.
Right. Yeah.
The service was bad.
Right.
You know what I mean? In my expectations. But it's interesting, Joe, to talk about that because people turned up because they were like, nah, the service is bad. I'm gonna tell you right now because I want you to fix it. So because I'm gonna come back tomorrow, but I want better and I want better service. So don't do this again. And I think I expect more. So I think to answer that, where this all is like I expect more of you. And I always wonder if that's almost a disadvantage to us in the sense of like, why are we always expecting perfection from us? Like, why do we expect perfection from us? Like knowing that we are all imperfect. And how that basically creates this disadvantage among us as well.
I think it's a mirror image of us. I think you look at yourself and you put yourself in that person's shoe and say, hey, as a Black man, as a Black woman, as a Black boy, as a Black girl, this is how I would react. This is how I would serve this other Black person that comes in there. And when we don't get that, it pisses us off on the inside. So I think that's kind of a gist of why we end up doing that, and we expect more from each other.
So like if you fail, I fail. Essentially, it's almost like we got type mentality.
Because other people are going to be looking at us
you
like
go to the
like
store,
that.
your mama tell you, "Don't come in here and embarrass me."
Facts.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So it's like because you're a reflection of me. So like if you got bad service, I can't even bring nobody here.
Right.
Because I don't want them.
I didn't vouch for you.
Yep.
Now you making us look bad.
Yeah.
Us look
That's
bad.
exactly
it's
how
because
that
the
goes.
us thing. I think the us we thing, unfortunately, is never selective. Like you know what I mean? Like we can't ever say like, nah, that's not us. You know what I mean? But it is us. So it's always like.
Well, it's like I think we've been put in a position where we always feel like it's always got to be like one mind, one sound type of thing. Where it's like,
there's versatility.
There's individuality
there's some great
blackness.
there's some great Black businesses. There's some that sucks.
Yes.
Like, it's just you're gonna get the whole spectrum. It is what it is.
And even the expectation, I think, of the Black businesses piece in the sense of like, you need to support me because this is us, and you like, nah, bruh, the quality that you got going on ain't fire.
Yeah, you just step it up.
Now when you get to that next level, I'm with you. I'm gonna contribute for the sake of contributing, but also I think now also we're also I think as we start to see a bit more multiplicity in the availability of Black businesses, I think we are starting to see some stuff go into like, I'm gonna tell you about this so that you can fix it. Whereas before, we just, like you said, wouldn't go back. Yeah. Now we're like, nah, like there's more people around. Now we have higher expectations of you. So I think we are having teachable moments.
So I think part of it, and you brought it up, Eric, we were talking about like ownership and like equity and all these, like there is a new rise of like Black entrepreneurs. Right. But one thing that I'm noticing, or at least just my perspective, is that I think it's becoming more of a fad, or like where it's just the wave. Like I want to own my own business, right? And that's all. Same thing where we were telling each other to be doctors, lawyers, athletes. Right. Now the new wave is be an entrepreneur,
be your own boss,
be your own boss,
right? Which
is cool, but not everybody's. It's the same thing. If you're pushing everybody to one thing, it's not. That's not the case. And what people don't realize is being an entrepreneur is a grind. Like it's hard to start your own business, to run your own business, and to have one where you could be proud of the service, the product, everything that you do.
Yeah. It's more than just changing your title on your Instagram.
Right. Profile,
exactly.
Right? Like,
that's the best part. You'd be like, have to get these IG.
Right. It looks great on Instagram, but it's like on the day to day, it's rough.
It's all fun and games until you got to eat what you kill.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love that. I love that quote of the idea that I only eat what I kill. I love that, but I don't think. It's interesting to me to see about where we'll net out as our generation, right, millennials, of like where we're gonna net out, especially with Gen Z coming up and how they're kind of really like this me generation of kind of just like, but we're seen as like the gig, like we literally are a generation of giggers. Like we're seen as hustlers, we're seen as strivers. And so I think it's gonna be empowering to see how we kind of net out within this, because we are sitting here being like, I want to do what I wanna do. And in order to do what I want to do, it's not making us lazy. It's making us a bit more creative of how we get there.
So it's twofold, right? Because I think one, there's a misperception of what it means to be an entrepreneur or business owner.
Right.
But on the other end, I do think our generation is going to be the cycle breaker.
Yeah.
And the folk that kind of propel us from an income and equity or from an economic standpoint out of some of the challenges that we're having now, right? Through entrepreneurship and business ownership.
Right.
So I think there's a little bit of a, it's twofold, right?
I think I agree.
Entrepreneurship seems very accessible, seems very sexy, easy to do, until you got to pay. Well, I think there was a quote, right? Until with the invoices, right? Separate them.
Everybody want to be a boss until the invoices is due. So everybody want to be a boss to the invoices.
But I'm very glad that folks are thinking about it.
Right.
They're trying to do it right, because I think entrepreneurship has been reserved for. It just hasn't been something that we've.
Right.
We've had access to, as much as we do now. So
I think the key word though that we miss oftentimes when we have this conversation about entrepreneurship is collaboration. Yeah. We always talk about like start your own business, own your own stuff, and so what we end up doing is in silos trying to build up our own thing. And it's like, all right, if you're an artist, like you're probably not a business person. So like to be able to run a legitimate business, like you'll struggle with that. Like even like for me, like I have businesses, I enjoy some of the processes of it, but I don't enjoy the Excel sheets and budgeting and all like that stuff is not fun.
Right.
But I enjoy the creative aspect of it. And so I think we miss on the collaborative effort, not only with the people that we do business with, but as communities, like, all right, supporting if I'm a business and I need paper, who am I buying my paper to? I need to get something printed.
Right.
What companies are we supporting each other in Black businesses and doing business with each other so that we're looking out and building and growing collaboratively. Right. And so just full disclosure, everybody at the table right now are people that I do business with. That when I started Damari Seville, my suit company, and Listen Up Media, who's my production company, I'm like, I need somebody. I know I can't be the accountant. I can't be the creative director, all these different things. I need people around me who have the skill set, who are educated, but also have the vision that I have. And what I've done is basically created this couch. And so I think that's the model that our generation, and especially right now, the wave is like pushing to support each other, to do business with each other. Right. Like even in this room, we're here at Damari Seville in our Beau Concept Lounge. The Beau Concept is a franchisee business. The one in Philadelphia is Black owned. So all of the furniture that we're sitting on is from Beau Concept in Philadelphia, owned by a Black man. The art on the walls are all Black artists. Cynthia Vaughn has done these. She's actually my aunt. And so I think it's that like collaboration that we oftentimes like leave off of the conversation, and we all rush to like go do our own thing and then struggle.
Yeah.
So there was something you said, like say I need something printed, where am I going to get my paper from? I feel like sometimes we hit a roadblock, right? You want to support these Black-owned businesses.
Right.
We don't always support our own businesses. So I can go to Staples and get paper for, one piece of paper is 10 cents. I go to the Black-owned store, I need one piece of paper. They're going to be like, oh, it's $2.
Right.
So now I need to make a business decision. Do I
Right.
spend the 10 cents or do I spend the $2?
Right.
And I think that's where we often run into an issue, right?
Yeah.
I need a doobie. I can go to Dominicans, $20. I can go to a black salon, $50 for a press and curl.
Right.
Like I think that's where we start to run into like, what do? I
Right.
want to support this, but sometimes we
What's
feel
the
like
downfall?
it costs so much
Right.
more.
So I think some of that is
It's survival too.
Well, yeah, again,
It's
I think it comes
survival,
to
right? You have
the individual
yeah.
versus the collective.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
crabs in a bucket, we like I'm trying to make my business work, so I got to do what I got to do.
Right.
Like, but if it's like collectively, like okay, if I gotta do business with you, your paper, it might be more expensive to do business with you. How can we make this work so there's benefits? Like I don't go out of business by supporting you.
Right. Right.
And it's crazy because in different cultures that I've experienced, I used to work in finance, and I had a lady that only did business with, her specific racial group. It didn't matter, we advised her, oh, well, she had a multi-million-dollar business, and we said, hey, you could probably get this cheaper elsewhere. But she didn't care. That was instilled in her since she was little. You buy stuff from people that look like you. You sell stuff to everybody. You know
Right,
what I mean?
exactly.
But when you're gonna have to spend your own money, and when you're gonna have to, surround yourself in your business with certain
And
things,
circulate that dollar?
you circulate that dollar in your own community and let dollars from other communities come in to circulate that community even more. And I don't think Black people as a whole have. They know it, but I don't think they've instilled that and cherished that and honored that, because it comes down to most of the times for us financial decisions. Do I want to pay 50 cents or do I want to pay $2? But
Right.
we are the generation that are hustlers and dreamers and things of that nature, and we're the ones that have to bite the bullet to do that.
Right.
Because otherwise, when is it going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think now more than ever, there's this discussion around supporting Black businesses. After you have all of these designer brands that are deciding to put nooses on their shirts and blackface hoodies and all kind of stuff, like it's to the point where we're like, why are
What
we
is it? The biggest, greatest in the jungle? What was it?
the wildest monkey in the jungle, something crazy like that?
Something
Like
crazy.
it's like it's like I'm glad this is happening. I'm completely glad it's happening, because it's to the point where we are the market. Like
What do we spend? I think we're gonna reach 1 trillion.
if
by
you can get the
2020.
black dollar, you will be rich. And like
Can we
somehow
talk-
it is not.
And this is
enough.
Rolanda. I want to go into the accountant though, because I'm always like, we're gonna reach like over, what is it? However trillion by 2021, right? And we're only 13% of the U.S. population.
This is the thing. All of
It's
these
insane.
companies, they literally do a study year after year. How do Black people spend their dollars?
Yep.
Because they know we spend all of our money.
Always.
And that is the problem. They will say
Overrent.
right. So if you're from a financial perspective, if you're saying I need to pay rent, I need to pay my car, I should only be spending 10% on this. We are the complete opposite.
No, we don't budget.
So they do these studies and they say, okay, Black people spend on clothes, they spend on electronics. Like they're running down the list, and it's all material things that we're spending our money on.
Right.
Why? That could be a deeper issue, because we feel
We
like we
know.
need to validate ourselves
Right.
to say I have this Gucci bag, this whatever.
Despite my
equate that with
oppression,
success.
I'm
Yes.
still winning.
Man, and we
Right.
come from royalty. You know what I'm saying? You might need a chain every now and then. You know, I'm
He's out here just giving personality. What's not real?
what I'm going back to say is a lot of these companies, right? We will not have a seat at their table.
Right.
But they value us enough to do a study year after year to see how we're spending our dollars. They use that to target us for marketing. What songs do they like to hear? What's
Right.
the new beat? Let me put this in the
Propaganda to the
background.
music.
Yes.
Right.
They're catering to us because they know we're going to spend our dollars.
Right.
And that's the problem. We have this power because we're spending
But you say they're
dollars.
catering to us, but they're not catering
They're
to
not
us
catering
because
to
they
us.
don't know the proper.
They're
messaging.
trying to,
Yeah.
They're
but
trying
they don't
to.
have any of us in the room. So like
Right.
eventually,
But I don't-
they're making mistakes.
I don't know if
and
I
they're
agree
pissing
about.
us
I don't know
off.
if I agree with that, because think about what Pepsi did with the Kendall Jenner commercial, right? Or like let's think about what happened with H&M, right? It's a global company, all these things. What if and just like for conversation, what if it's not that we're not at the table? What if we just don't want to be that person that day? What if I am tired of having to be the woke voice in the room?
Right, that's true.
And you know what I'm saying?
Or
Like,
there's not enough of us. Like, so even if we're at the table, we don't have enough support that if we do speak
And
up,
I say, no,
like
don't do
everybody's
this.
looking at you like the angry black woman
Right.
or the
I
angry black
can't
man.
say we are at the table. I can say I started in Big Four accounting. When I left, they said, hey, we have a problem retaining African Americans. You don't have a problem retaining us. It's only 10 of us. So when I left, you lost 10% of your population.
Right.
You had a problem getting us in the door.
Right.
I worked at a luxury jewelry company
Right.
where it was known you're not getting past this level as a minority.
Right.
It is known we are not their core customers.
Right.
So I can't say we have a seat at the table because from my experience, we're not wanted at the table unless it is required.
And it's our generation. Like, if you look at the climate of what's happening right now, like, just to be super cliche, like, this is the wokest, like,
but it is
since
but I
probably
think,
the
but I think
civil rights movement
but I
that
think
we've
it's fake
been.
woke. I think it's fake woke
Well,
though.
but it's still, but regardless, whether it's real, fictitious, or that it is woke, and that's what the climate is. So now when you trying to make decisions on how to bias, these companies are making mistakes, right? Because they're doing things that are pissing people off, like. To which they thought was going to be a good idea,
Right.
which all it would take is some representation to be
But we're
like,
like, so now
you
we're
probably
canceling
shouldn't
people. But now we're canceling people and we're misinformed.
Well,
so
that's a
that's
whole
why I call it,
different-
and I
that's a whole
call it,
different thing,
but
yeah.
it's not. I think everything is a domino effect.
Right,
it's
right.
like people canceled H&M. They closed 1,000 stores. Did y'all see that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and whether that, and most of them weren't in America,
Right.
but whatever happened, we saw the last thing we saw about H&M was whatever, wildest monkey in the jungle. Next thing we see about H&M closing 1,000 stores all over the world.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And we could take
Many
that
of
as
which
an
they were
appreciation.
closing anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Stores that were already
So they
closing.
know how to promote.
But things that our fake woke black generation,
Fake woke.
they're taking in the sense of like validation, like, oh, we
Those
did
aren't
this.
wins. Yeah,
That
those
wasn't-
aren't wins.
And what I'm saying is that
Right.
it's leading to us being misinformed.
Right.
And I think, go ahead. What were you about to say?
No, I was gonna say. I think you gotta think about 2019 versus 2009, right? Some of these things are still happening,
Right.
Right. We got social media, right?
Right.
There's different ways for us to get our voice out there or to
Right.
get information to each other, a lot quicker. Which is now the pressures on a lot of these corporations, right? Because there's a business case for diversity, or you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
selling to certain audiences, right? So I think it's the challenge is on us, right? Like to kind of filter through what's real and what's not real.
But we're not doing that though.
Well, yeah, I think that goes back to your like fake woke, right?
Right. Yeah.
So like, while yes, everybody's very, very like sensitive to like racial, issues and things like that,
Right.
and we're holding people
Sensitive.
accountable.
I think this is just people are just
sensitive. It's sensitive.
Yes.
Except for ourselves, right? So
Right.
like you see, okay, in response to all of these things, what you see is boycotts or protests.
Back to like civil rights.
Like,
you
so it's
talk
like,
about.
hey, no, not even, because back then they were only boycotting things that they actually needed, right? Like, if I need the bus to get to work, and the bus,
and we
the
walking.
bus system, the bus
Right.
system's not doing. We're gonna hurt the bus system,
But we hurting ourselves.
but we're gonna walk, but we're gonna make them treat us right, and we're gonna get back on the bus.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, now we're talking about.
I need water from a water fountain.
Right, now
I need
fast
to go
forward-
eat at a diner.
Exactly.
Right.
I need to eat at a diner and eat water. Like, these things need to be great. We're gonna make some trouble, but we're gonna come back to this because we
Right.
need it. We're treating now in 2019. We're trying to boycott Gucci. We're
Right.
like, we don't need Gucci. If
Right.
they're not gonna
Just stop
if they-
buying it.
Yeah, just stop buying it.
Right.
And then instead of spending your dollars with them, don't boycott them for 3 months and come back to them.
Right.
Spend
and,
money.
And spend the same amount of money you would have spent over the course of 3 months.
Right, you take that money and then put
go
it
to
into a
DeMar
business.
Seville.
And put it into a business.
Facts.
Yeah, DeMar Seville plug. But anyway, put it into a business that is owned by you, that's building for you, that's built for you, and is in keeping you. So like one of the things I was mad at was when here in Philly, when Starbucks had that incident where they called the cops on the 2 boys, right? Starbucks, I think, as a corporation, did the right thing. They handled it the way that you want to. So I have no issue with Starbucks. I have an issue with the way that we handled it because for like 2 weeks, there was like 4 or 5 demonstrations and protests in front of that Starbucks.
Right.
At no time, I'm not gonna say at no time. That's too broad of a term, but. With all of those people, thousands of people that showed up to protest in front of the store,
Y'all could have been giving business to a
all
black
of y'all
coffee
could have
shop.
just walked over to the nearest black coffee shop and
Right.
bought a coffee.
Facts.
And what would I have done to a coffee shop who's built for you, who's owned by you,
Right.
who has a space where they're not calling the cops on you
Right.
when you at a business meeting,
Right.
who are creating a safe space for you? Like, why do we not take that next step to where it's like, okay, here's our power. We're gonna spend our money regardless. This is just it's in us.
It's in us.
It's in us. We
Right.
we like to spend money.
Because we kings, right?
We kings, man. I mean, like, hey, we royalty. We're gonna spend the money. If it's not made for you, it's not showing you, it's not representing you. Why not take that money to people who are built for you, who to build up the service that we want, or the luxury, or the quality.
Right.
Like, we need money.
Right.
We need, you know what I mean?
In order to get to the place we want to be, and it's interesting to me because even just to spin this on its head, right? Think about, like, we live in the age now where, like, the Rihannas have Fenty, they have and like she's got an entire line. They're doing partnerships now. We have Virgil Abloh with, like, Off-White, and now he's got Louis Vuitton. Like, we're directing the conversation and pushing things out. So now you can go buy Louis Vuitton and you support Black in a way, right? Off-White, that's Black owned. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Yeezy, in a way. Like, we're seeing these things that are pop culture that we're driving and we're a part of. But then I also see people, once again, I think this connects itself back to, like, the cancellation culture. Right. Where, like, you know, Kanye says some things that people don't like. Now people are canceling Yeezy. So now what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, it's like we can't pick and choose, because I think that leans into the conversation piece that we were going to go down before, where you're talking about we're sensitive. So it's like, it's that balance, right? Like, being sensitive, but being kind of like in our own realm of, like, expectation, because we expect more from our people. So, like, don't say nothing crazy, because goes back to that thing you talk about. Don't go embarrass me, you know. And when people embarrass us, now I have to discipline you by not supporting you. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think that, like you said, like, I think we're misinformed about a lot of decision making. I think a lot of the things that I've seen as of late, particularly just in pop culture and in media, is a lot of bandwagoning. We see that with people, like, protesting the NFL, being misinformed about why that was done. We see that by people, like, protesting against certain stars and celebrities and not knowing exactly what happened, or being informed. And I think, Joe, you said it. You're like, everything's at our fingertips. In the read.
Right.
You know?
I think it's like, go ahead, Joe.
No, and I think we got to be careful too in how we blindly support businesses because they have a minority person attached to that company. Correct. Right? Because, you know what I mean? Like, that's one seat at the table, right? But, you know what I mean? We need more seats at the table. Right. So I think that's something that we've got to be very careful about too, right? Because you name some folks who, you know, doing some great things at different companies, but is that truly, you know, representative of us, right? So I think we got to be careful there.
I think it's two sides. There's always going to be, like, we need people, like, at the top. It might only be one or two of them at these the highest parts of the highest levels of these companies. We need that representation, but at the same time, so as we as consumers need to support them, but they also need to know that we are the leverage, right? Like, we are the dollars. And if you're the voice in the room that represent the dollars, then you probably have the most important voice in the room. Right. And at the end of the day, like, you should. And then we, as the collective, need to understand or have an idea of what it is we want to get accomplished. Right. Like, because we can boycott some stuff, we can protest and do stuff, but it's like, what is it that we're trying to fix? Do you want to boycott these high-end brands that aren't meant for you, that get in your dollars, just so they can give you stuff that's not racist, so you can spend your money there again?
Right. When you think about the theme of all the companies that had these missteps or these miscues, they're all brands that don't really serve communities of color.
They don't serve communities of color. Communities of color keep them employed.
What did Tommy Hilfiger say, or Ralph Lauren? They were like, I don't make my stuff for you.
Right. And that's the mentality at these board meetings and these corporate offices.
They do that, but they subconsciously do it. And not to cut you off, it's kind of like how Rolanda was basically saying, like, they do tests and they do studies and stuff because they know that we control the cool. Right. We control everything that's cool. So yeah, we don't have the most money in the world, and no, if every black dollar went to Gucci or Louis or anywhere, that's still not going to keep that company afloat. Right. But they know that if we're spending, other people are going to look at us, and other people are going to think we're cool, and then they're going to go spend just like us. So they have to keep us hooked.
Right. But what is it about us that makes us feel that we need these brands to be validated, right? Like, when I worked in New York, I could literally get a piece of paper and see this person's bonus is going to be $850,000. Right. So I'm expecting, when he comes through the door to get this piece of paper, I'm expecting to see the drip, right? And what do I see? Some loafers on his feet, some jeans, maybe had on a polo button-up. Hopped on the subway and got home, where we would be like, Subway, excuse me, where's my driver? Right. And don't pull up in a Toyota.
Right.
You need a drop top S5. Like,
Right.
what is it about
Don't judge
us
me
that
because I
makes us
take
feel-
Uber Black. All right.
I'm not throwing shots at you. I'm just saying, what is it that makes us feel like we have to have this Louis bag? We have to have this Gucci jacket.
Right.
Like, why?
But
do
that's
we
full
feel
circle.
that?
I think it goes back to what we're talking about with Carter G. Woodson. I think it's this idea, and what I was kind of talking about earlier about we have such a disdain for where we came from because what we remember is slavery. We don't remember we don't remember our true roots and heritage. So everything that we're doing is an adverse effect or response to what we came from. So remember, like, I don't want to think about poverty. I don't want to think about that. So let me be aspirational, whether I'm gonna fake it until I make it, so that I can have these things, so I can show you, whoever the you is, the universal you, that you didn't hold me down, that I'm still out here popping. You know what I mean? And even if it's to a deficit, you know what I'm saying? Like, to my own fault.
Because that's the part that pains me. Like, I can be driving down the street in the hood
Right.
and look at the bus stop and see 6 Louis bags, and I'm
Right.
like, what?
I think we all come from a point of like privilege as well, or
Right.
some sort of privilege to
Right.
where like we are where we are. We've learned enough and experienced enough to be like to do all of these things, especially if I ain't got it, is probably detrimental. And it's not really. And like you said, we've been around people where you've seen white folks, other people with money that don't have that. Like, so I've been in my team parking lot, and players got Bentleys, they got like G wagons, all the Mercedes. Like, and the team owner don't have no Bentley, don't own a Bentley.
Yeah.
So it's like, how are you as a player?
Right.
A player,
Right.
You own a Bentley, but the dude who's making billions,
Right.
a billionaire,
billionaire.
does not own one of those.
Does not own it. Right.
He riding around in a regular Tesla.
Right.
Like,
And I think it's our conditioning, right? We have a very like I deserve it mentality.
Right.
Man, I work so hard, man. That,
I
that man,
came from nothing.
like, oh man, I owe that to
and
myself.
listen, don't get me wrong, because
you know.
in the age of fake wokeness, we also in the age of self-care, right? And so because
True.
and you know, and the other thing is, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We fake woke, but we also like, but I need this. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
For my
For
mental
myself,
sanity,
yeah.
for myself, for my anxiety.
I
This
work
is what's
hard.
on I work
Why
hard.
shouldn't I
You know what
have
I mean?
it, though?
Why
That's the
shouldn't I
thing.
have
Why
it?
shouldn't I
And
have
I
it?
think we have to find a balance. I think we have to find a delicate balance, because I do agree with this idea. I think even just making it full circle again, going back to what we're talking about with Woodson, is this idea that like we got to figure out a way to bring up these other kings with us when we make it, right? So teaching, having these teachable moments, being able to share this wealth distribution, right?
Yeah.
With ownership and things like that. But also like, because I agree, like I think like, you know, when I die or when I pass away, I'm like, I want to be able to pass something down,
Right.
so that we have this idea of like trust.
Generational
So
wealth.
we're creating generational wealth.
and so how we think of or at least I'm gonna speak for my own self. The way I've seen generational wealth in like for our people,
Right.
is that one person makes it, and then you support everybody around you, right?
Right.
So if I hit it big, I'm about my mama house. I got my
that's
cousins.
not
I'm
what
doing
you do.
right. So I'm the only one. I'm the breadwinner, right?
Right.
And then if I fall off or something
Right.
doesn't happen, or when I'm done playing, we use up all those resources. Then we
Right.
have no way to maintain it. It's
Right,
not
and then you sitting
generational.
there living in your mama's house that you just bought her,
Right.
Because you don't got no more funds. You know what I'm saying? And I
Right.
think that's what concerns me, because that's what ends up happening. Like we talked
Yes.
about this.
We don't
you know
have
what
the
I mean?
collaborative like
It's
to
not-
where
right.
I make it. Okay, what I'm doing is now I'm empowering y'all to
Right.
make it.
Absolutely.
And then now we empower
Right.
them to make it.
Absolutely.
And then and we continue to like build. So when I'm done, I can kick my feet up.
Right.
And this ship still keeps going.
I think the difference is like, rather than bringing the food, let me bring you to the water.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like let me show you where the water is.
teach you how to fish.
And teach
I'm
you
not
how to
gonna-
fish.
I'm not
right.
gonna bring you fish,
I'm
I'm
not
gonna
gonna bring you
teach
to
you to
fish. Let me
fish.
teach you how to fish.
Right.
And I don't think we do that.
Right.
Like I think
I'll
about.
catch you a couple fish, but I'm gonna teach you.
I'm gonna show you how it's done. I'm gonna show you how it's done,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna hand you the pole.
Yes.
I'm gonna hand you the pole. You got this though. Everything else is on you. I think that's where we kind of break that cycle, that dangerous cycle where we are. And I think that I am very excited and expectant of our generation, of us getting there. Because even doing it for our parents, like I mean, I don't know. I know almost all of you at this table, like we're all supporting our parents in some way or another. Like whether it's teachable moments, whether it's financially, whatever it is. And I think that let's obviously like help them, support them, whatever, but then also kind of like as we get ready for this me generation that's coming through, like it's definitely that trickle down. It's your children, it's our cousins and nieces and nephews and things like that, because otherwise we're gonna continue to be 13% of the population and everyone else is gonna beat us, and we're gonna still be out here outspending everybody and just be in this dangerous cycle.
I mean, you look at all of it, like we talked about some of the categories, right? We're pretty much last as it relates to like income.
Yep.
We're last when it comes to wealth.
Yep.
Or last when it comes to own it business, right?
Yeah.
Like education, right? Even creating jobs from the
Right.
businesses,
Right.
to Malcolm's earlier point, right? Like we're like, I'm gonna go be a consultant. I'm gonna have this single, owner operator business.
Right.
We're not even employing and passing down that information through the businesses that we're creating. So
Right.
I think it's gonna take a shift, right? But I do think, there's been no time like this time right now
Right.
for our generation or for our people to kind of make that shift. So,
So I think that's a good place to end it, because we about to go into a whole nother place. So what I would say is, in closing, people, what we've learned today is, one, support black businesses. Businesses that are black owned, support each other, pass that dollar around as much as you can. We're going to serve everybody. Our businesses are not for the black consumer, it's for everybody.
Right.
But we're going to serve each other when it comes to building each other up. You got to find ways to yes, take yourself up as an individual
Right.
and accomplish everything that you want. But if you're not bringing nobody with you, you're not helping the collective.
Right.
And also, we got to stop teaching our kids that they can only be doctors, lawyers, and athletes, but they can be all of those things and more for the collective body and for themselves. So hopefully we catch you next time at the table and we'll discuss some more issues.